In its article, France/Rwanda, le rapport Duclert sous le feu des critiques, published on February 24, 2026, the media outlet Monde Afrique relays a synthesis of criticisms produced by Jambo Asbl against the findings of the Duclert Commission report on France and the genocide perpetrated against the Tutsi. While scholarly debate about historical methodology is legitimate, the arguments presented by Jambo Asbl rely on selective interpretation, misleading framing, and narratives long associated with revisionist interpretations of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. This documentary response clarifies the record. Jambo Asbl presents itself as an association of Rwandan exiles promoting debate on the history of Rwanda. However, its publications and advocacy positions have drawn criticism from genocide scholars, survivor organizations, and policy observers for promoting narratives that challenge the established historical consensus about the genocide against the Tutsi. Several characteristics are relevant to evaluating its critique of the Duclert report. The association has consistently promoted the controversial double genocide narrative, which argues that atrocities committed during the conflict should be interpreted as two equivalent genocides. This framing contradicts the findings of international judicial bodies such as the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, which legally established the genocide against the Tutsi as a distinct and organized campaign of extermination. The organization has participated in debates in Europe concerning legislation addressing genocide denial and historical memory of the genocide against the Tutsi. Its media platform has repeatedly challenged mainstream historical interpretations of the events of 1990 to 1994. These elements do not invalidate every argument made by Jambo Asbl. However, they provide essential context when assessing its critique of a major historical inquiry such as the Duclert report. Jambo Asbl argues that the Commission relied mainly on French archives. In reality, the Commission chaired by historian Vincent Duclert was specifically mandated by the French government to examine France's institutional responsibility in Rwanda between 1990 and 1994. To do so, it received unprecedented access to presidential archives, military archives, diplomatic archives, and intelligence and administrative records. These archives had previously been partially inaccessible to historians. Their systematic declassification was itself a major step toward transparency in France's historical accountability. Because the mandate concerned French decision-making, French state archives were logically the primary source base. Critics claim that relying primarily on French documents creates a problem of unicité des sources. In historical methodology, examining internal state archives is standard practice when assessing state responsibility and decision-making processes. The Commission included specialists in genocide studies, military history, diplomatic history, and archival science. Their objective was not to reconstruct the entire Rwandan war, but to document how French institutions perceived and acted during the crisis. This approach produced a detailed reconstruction of French policy debates and intelligence assessments. Jambo Asbl argues that the Commission judged French actors with hindsight. However, the report demonstrates that warnings about the risk of genocide existed before 1994 in diplomatic cables, intelligence reports, and field observations. These contemporary documents show that ethnic radicalization within the regime of Juvenal Habyarimana was known, extremist militias were forming, and mass violence against Tutsi civilians had already occurred. The report's conclusion that French authorities remained blind to the genocidal dynamic is therefore grounded in documents produced at the time, not retrospective speculation. Jambo Asbl claims the report omits crimes committed by the Rwandan Patriotic Front. In reality, The Commission's mandate was limited to France's role between 1990 and 1994. The conduct of the RPF, or later conflicts in the Democratic Republic of Congo, fall outside that mandate. Other investigations, including the UN Mapping Report on Human Rights Abuses in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, address violence in the region after 1994. These issues, while important, are separate from the question examined by the Duclert Commission: French policy toward Rwanda before and during the genocide. Critics argue that the report was produced to facilitate political rapprochement between France and Rwanda. However, the Duclert Commission report on France and the genocide against the Tutsi is a 1,200-page historical study supported by extensive archival documentation. Its central conclusion is that France bore heavy and overwhelming responsibilities due to political, military, and ideological support provided to the Habyarimana regime despite clear warning signs. Following the report, French President Emmanuel Macron publicly acknowledged these responsibilities during his visit to Kigali in May 2021. The Duclert report does not claim that the RPF committed no violations. Rather, it notes that the genocide itself was carried out by extremist elements within the Rwandan state apparatus and affiliated militias. International jurisprudence from the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda confirmed the organized nature of the genocide and convicted numerous senior officials involved in its planning and execution. Some political figures, including former officials such as Edouard Balladur and Hubert Védrine, have disputed aspects of the report. This is not unusual. Historical commissions investigating state responsibility often face resistance from individuals whose decisions are scrutinized. Such disagreements do not invalidate the archival evidence presented by the Commission. It is widely acknowledged that multiple actors failed to prevent the genocide, including the United Nations, Belgium, and the United States. However, the Duclert Commission's focus was France's unique political and military relationship with the Habyarimana regime during the years preceding the genocide. Recognizing the failures of other actors does not negate the responsibilities documented in French archives. The Duclert Commission report on France and the genocide against the Tutsi represents the most comprehensive archival investigation ever conducted into France's role in Rwanda between 1990 and 1994. Its conclusions are grounded in previously inaccessible state archives and a systematic historical methodology. Critiques such as those compiled by Jambo Asbl illustrate the continuing political and historiographical disputes surrounding the memory of the genocide against the Tutsi. Nevertheless, the report played a key role in the historic reconciliation process between France and Rwanda, following decades of diplomatic tension.